Welcome to Coffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person.
Dan, there's often been a story told in the Pokemon community about an arch rival thing, two tremendous Pokemon competitors. I guess they had faced off at worlds regionals and nationals and worlds, and they didn't like each other. They didn't like each other at all. But they had both won a lot of events, and through that time, they had grown a big following and had certain endorsements within the hobby. And they never got to a point of fisticuffs. They never got to a point of fighting, but it got to be something that through social media and other things, they were showing their love of Pokemon to be above and beyond, not just the competitive side, but actual the cards. So you would see them and they would go out and they would show their decks at different, get-togethers, sometimes even at restaurants. There was one guy who was trying to be cute and showing the cards when he would go to bed at night. And then all of a sudden, you would have the spouses of these people. There was only one spouse, the other was a girlfriend. They would weigh in and then they would get into it. And everybody started weighing in on the whole thing. And over the course of time, it increased their following. But you began to wonder if those folks actually did it, utilize, leverage their competitive success for the right reasons. And then you had social media weigh in, and of course, everybody was negative, and they're like, well, this isn't the right reasons. This should never happen. But all of that was more dramatic and continued to increase their followers. In the end, no one could ever assess the actual impact of what they were doing because it didn't infringe upon their competitive success, but what was it doing to their images and their reputations alongside of everything else? And I liken that to you and me a little bit because as people look at us, they're wondering, what's in it for us? What's in it for them? Is there anything in it for us that's not in it for them? Is there anything for us that's not in it for us that should be in it for them? And none of it, to me, ever makes any sense because I don't want to be judged by you or anybody watching and as audience member. I just want to do videos that are long lasting, evergreen, ever present, omnipresent, omnidimensional, and something that we can be proud of when I'm long gone, you're long gone, and possibly our kids, not yours, mine, may carry on into the future. And that's the lesson. I think that's really the lesson, Dan, is that we can sit here and we can do this all day long. And we can just chat, and people can run it at 1.25, 1.5, or 2 times speed, and you can get your little ad generation and stuff. But are we of the type of people that are actually going to be concerned with that? And what about our friends? Shouldn't we care enough about them to really understand where we've been before and where we're ultimately going to? I think we should, Dan. I think if we're not looking at that, we're not looking intensely enough, purposefully enough at what the outcome is going to be of these videos down the road and really understanding the magnitude of their influence. Your thoughts?
That was so impossible to follow. Genuinely no idea what point you were trying to make there. There was so much in that.
Dan, thank you. Thank you for trying to listen. And that's really all that matters. Dan, you know what? In yesterday's video, let me just say something before we start up. Just our little tip of purchase of the day. So this is what's out at Sam's Club right now.
Oh, yeah.
Sam's Club has these on sale for $49.99. You have to be a member. So it's not great if you're not a member. This is more geared, my little advertisement, to folks that are a member, a limit of 2. But if you're a member, because I think it's like $40 or something, and you've already paid, you grab a couple of those online, which you do as a member, you get free shipping. So that's what I did. I bought a couple. I'm really happy. By the way, in the fine print, it says, this is hilarious, we won't package them up in any way. They're going to be left on the street in front of your house. It actually says that. And so we're coming home yesterday, one day after I ordered them, and sitting out in front of my house, way out at the end of my long driveway, is a cardboard box with 2 open Charizard EX premium collections sitting in them, wide open for the world to take. Thank goodness that we were aware they were there and were able to grab them quickly. So kind of a good deal, and it's nice that they're limiting them. I think it's great. I did test it and go the next day just to see if they would even let you get more. I think people always want to know that, and it said no. Maybe we'll do that in the future, but right now, the limit is 2, so just be aware. All right, Dan. Yeah. Here's what's happening today. We're going to pick up from yesterday. How are we going to pick up from yesterday, David? I don't have a clue. I don't know. I just, we don't, So I tell you guys, I don't tell Dan 3/4 of the time what's coming. It'll be more fun that way. So yesterday, and Dan just posted this video, we were talking about things like this. what is that called? Heart Gold Sold Silver Trainer Kit.
Yeah.
Today I'm doing all the pictures, guys. I'm giving Dan a break from any kind of editing. He deserves a break. And we talked about things like this. These are pictures that were in our video from yesterday. It was a really good video, podcast, trainer kits. And I'm just showing a couple because Dan did a great job of editing and putting them in there. And I want you guys to know that a lot of these videos, if you're just listening to us, you're missing some of the pictures. And that was yesterday, this concept of trainer kits. And we talked about, and there were some comments on we talked about mini sets and the definition of mini sets, and is it a set, and is it got variants in it, and that kind of stuff. And I thought that we would kind of dovetail today into a few other things that fit somewhere alongside of everything we covered yesterday. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these items up. I'm not claiming to provide a comprehensive holding of all items, but that will hopefully give Dan, our wealth of knowledge, a chance to comment just a bit on each of those. On each of these. We're not going to go into any great detail. We'll do that in another video should you guys want us to. Some of these demand a lot more attention than what we're going to give today. But at least Dan can comment and sort of talk about how they do or don't differ from what we were discussing yesterday. Are you ready, Dan?
Sure.
Okay. So in no particular order, because I don't know the order, and if I knew the order, I would put them in a particular order, and Dan will correct me when I get them in the wrong order, but here we go. How do these items fit or not fit what happened yesterday? Here we go.
Okay,
Because
so
yesterday we were talking about, Dan will tell you what these are, but yesterday we were talking about, this whole concept of trainer decks and trainer kits and having something you can start with and playing the game and everything. So Dan, let's start with these two.
Well, so if people don't know, those are trainer decks A and B. They contain cards from base set. Differences are on the backs, they have red borders, and it will say either trainer deck A or B on it. And there is a Blastoise in the Misty one and a Machamp in the Brox one that are non-foil. Those are the only non-foil versions of those cards, and it's actually the only non-first edition version of the Machamp. So the biggest difference between those and what we talked about yesterday, the trainer kits, is that the trainer kits were products that were made for sale. The trainer decks A and B were never products for sale. These were products that were created and sent out to Pokemon leagues, and very, very early Pokemon leagues, and they were for the league leaders themselves to play with, to teach people how to play. There was never a thing where you could say, we'll show you how to play, and then you can buy the trainer deck A or B yourself. They teach you how to play with that deck, and then you can buy, the 2-player starter set or one of the base set theme decks. So that is the absolute biggest difference between anything else, is that those were not a retail product.
Okay, great. All right, here we go.
Well, yep, that's the 2-player starter set from, I'm assuming that's the base set version. I know base set 2 had a almost identical looking one, but that is another good starting product for people to get into the game. That, I believe, has 2 full 60-card decks in it, and it's just ready to go for 2 people to start playing out of the box. So that's a WotC product that does feature a lot of the same reasoning behind releasing the trainer kits. That one, I don't believe there's any. I think obviously the Machamp comes in there, which is numbered within base set, but you can't pull the Machamp from booster packs. But none of the rest of the cards are variants in any way. They're all just base set cards.
But again, so there's still this concept of learning how to play the game with some of these, like this 2-player starter set.
Yeah, that's still a retail product, which the intention was that's where you'd start out. That would be the first thing you buy if you're learning to start playing Pokemon.
Okay. All right, so let's move to this one now. And this is just a random sample of one of these.
Okay.
But let's look at this.
Yep, so that's one of the theme decks that I mentioned. That one's a base set 2 theme deck. So with basically all sets up until about mid Sword and Shield era, any set would come with, I think, between 2 and 4 different theme decks. So those would be a one-person deck It'd be a ready-to-play deck out the box, but obviously you could upgrade it with... It wouldn't be a perfect tournament-playable deck. It would be a way to start playing, but unlike the two-player one, this was more once you knew how to play the game. This was a bit more powerful deck, but this was you just bought, and it's your deck. It's not for two people to learn how to play. You would need one of these, and your friend would need one of these. And, they're called theme decks because they're normally based around a theme, like whether that's a type or around a certain Pokemon, something like that.
Okay, so and it is possible, depending on at what point they started inserting or not inserting variant type cards, that you could get a non-hollow if the set had a hollow, or a hollow if the set had a non-hollow, or a different type of hollow, just depending, as a component of one of these theme decks. Correct?
Yeah, I believe the first one was the Legendary Collection Lava and Turmoil decks, which had the non-hollows of Charizard, Dark Raichu, and Dark Blastoise. I think those were the only ones that WotC ever did that had variants in it. And then, I don't know if Ruby Sapphire itself did, but I think starting from Sandstorm, I think basically all of them had some variants, even if it was just one extra foil that wasn't normally foil.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to show this one now. Again, I just pulled a couple of sample things. I have a reason behind this, which hopefully you'll figure out as we keep going. Let me show this for a second. Let me pull this one back up. There's a reason that I'm going to show, and hopefully Dan will tell you. There's obviously, they don't look exactly the same, although they might be intended to be sort of the same or the same in nature. They don't look the same. So Dan, what is obviously, why do they look different?
It's just redesigns through the years, and I think from the Switch when WotC switched, well, WotC lost the license and TBCI started producing their own stuff, or Pokemon USA, I think it was at the time. I think they did a lot of redesigns of products to somewhat differentiate themselves from how WotC did things, but it is basically the same product at heart. It's a theme deck. It's a deck you buy and can play right out the box, and then upgrade as the set goes.
So one of the things that I loved, Dan, in the very beginning of Pokemon was I loved that the theme decks tended to match the colors of the actual booster box. And I've mentioned before, but nobody watched it, and so I'll just mention it again. Why not? Just keep trying, David. There's got to be at least one person that cares about you. Did I say all that out loud? Luca, wake up, honey. Get off my chair. So basically, I love the fact that you could put the theme decks on top of the booster boxes and everything was perfectly color coordinated. And it kind of lasted through, even with Delta Species and some of these other ones, despite the different packaging. Most of it was fairly, compatible color-wise, and I always love that, okay? Now, at some point, things changed. And I don't know exactly when this happened, but let me show you what I have here. And we'll look at a couple of examples of when did it start? When did these stop? When did the theme decks related specifically to a booster box or set stop? That's my question, and why. So let's look at this for a second. This is called a Lycanroc V Battle deck. Okay, and I'm going to show one more example here. Here's a Corviknight V Battle deck. I have no idea if these are from the same set, time frame, or nothing. Again, I just pulled a couple. And I want Dan to talk about, is there any reason, Dan, why when these came out relative to the other ones that were set related, I had no interest in collecting these anymore? Why don't I have in my collection battle decks? Sorry, Luca. Sorry, babe, I dropped one. Just go back to sleep, honey. Why do I not care? These are not really part of my collection. Why did these not resonate with me? And because they're not, to me, a part of a specific set or something? Or am I completely misunderstanding or misnaming that?
Well, that's most likely why, is because they're not related to the sets.
Okay.
I think the reasoning behind it was, well, one, when they build those decks, there's a much bigger variety of cards in them. Like, whenever you get a theme deck from a set, all of the Pokemon, or at least almost all of the Pokemon, will be from that new set. Trainers will be mixed from older sets because you need different trainers to play. But with the V Battle decks, it's a much broader spectrum, and they have an exclusive Black Star promo as the V on the front is a Black Star promo. So they do it that way, I believe, also to extend the shelf life of it a bit, because with theme decks, no one wants the theme deck for the last set. It's the people don't want it on the shelves. People don't really want to buy it that much. With the V Battle decks, they can sit out there for a bit longer. They don't have to keep producing as many decks. I don't think the theme decks really also were selling that well, at least from working in stores. People didn't want them. Even the newer players, maybe they'd buy a theme deck, but a lot of times newer players would gravitate towards other products. Like we say, the Battle Academy and stuff is so much better for newer players. So there was also just a huge jump always between theme decks and a deck that was competitive. So once you now have things like Battle Academy as the getting into playing product, V Battle decks and then eventually League Battle decks upped the standard of how good the deck was and upped the complexity of the deck. Like, for example, having a V in it, which is a bit more of a more complex mechanic than just a standard deck would have. So it upped that level so that people had a bit more of a jump from Battle Academy to that next thing, and then could jump up a bit more to an actual competitive level deck.
So, do you think that the theme decks are worth so much more than V Battle type decks, strictly because of their vintage quality and the fact that there's likely to be fewer of them? And the reason I ask is because, to my knowledge, when I go back and I think about these kinds of decks, I have some cases of these that I bought because I thought they were a good deal, and I probably paid $4 or $5 a deck, and you can't sell them even at $4 or $5. Like, nobody wants these decks. So, and again, I'm sorry. I always have a little bit of an investment slant in things too, because if it's sitting in my closet and it's taking up space and I wasted money on it, that doesn't make me feel good. Why does nobody want these older, 4, 5, 6 year older V battle deck things, Dan?
Well, so one of the reasons, like, as you said, they're not as older product as theme decks. Pokemon's print run has basically increased consistently, other than the slight dip towards the end of WotC, start of TPCI. But basically, all of the V Battle decks would have been printed still way more than any of the last few theme decks, especially because, as I said, they were extending the shelf life of them. So I don't believe the V Battle decks were coming out every 3 months like theme decks were. They were maybe 6 months period. So even if it was the same amount being printed at a time, you're looking at double the time period that these were available for. So these were everywhere, and they were a lot more consistently restocked from what I saw, because a lot of the theme decks, stores would get their original shipment when a set came out, and then they just wouldn't be available from distributors because distributors didn't want to be having a ton of these. Same with if you went to the bigger box stores like Target, Walmart, they'd have some theme decks when a set first came out, and then you'd never see restocks. But the V Battle decks, you would constantly see restocking them for the whole shelf life of that product.
Next one, Dan. And this one, I know you'll want to dive into a deeper story, especially because of the one that you guys own. But I'll just show it, and we'll try to stay to just mention the neat thing about this. But I definitely want to talk about this. So now we're at something called the Battle Arena deck. Okay. And this says on the back of this, I think 2014, if I'm reading it correctly. So talk about what is the difference now. We've moved to this Battle Arena deck reputation wise, and then you can mention the specific anomaly about this particular box. It is not the one I'm showing, but Dan owns. So just point out, Dan, on Laura owns one. So take a look at the Yveltal just real quick, guys, just for a moment, and everything looks normal on that card on the front. And then I'm going to put this down, and Dan will describe this item for you.
So these are actually older products than the V Battle decks. These were back in XY era, I think maybe end of Black and White era as well. So they were 2-player, more advanced than theme decks. So you basically got that, and it was like getting 2 theme decks, but a bit more powered up. And again, they would have some exclusive cards in them. That one has exclusive Black Star promos. I know there was the Darkrai Mewtwo, and the Rayquaza Keldeo one had exclusive foils, exclusive non-foils, that kind of thing. So those are kind of a precursor to the V Battle decks, actually, because the original few of those, you had to buy the 2-pack. Then with the last Battle Arena deck, you could get the Charizard and the Blastoise one separately. And then when you get to the V Battle decks, you could either buy them separately or there was a combined pack of the two. So those are very much the precursor to that, but those were coming out at the same time as theme decks. So those offered the next jump up from theme decks before you got to fully competitive decks. And what you were saying about the Yveltal, I think a lot of people know there's an error version of that Yveltal, which doesn't have the attack damage on it. I'll make sure there's pictures on screen. The last attack, there are copies out there that just don't have any damage on it, similar to the Ninetales from base set that I think a lot more people know about. And it was believed there was one or two cases that people actually found that had this error version, and you can actually see it in the window because, like you showed there, you can see the Yveltal. Fun fact: there's a second Yveltal in the deck, but people have opened these error ones, and the second copy that's in the deck doesn't have the error. It's only the Yveltal on the front that actually has the error. My assumption is that's to do with sheet printing. They print the stuff that goes in the box as its own, like, 59 card deck on a sheet. So that all gets cut up and packaged together. And then there's a separate sheet for the front-facing cards, which then get packaged on top at a different point in the production. So my assumption is that's why the error happened there. But that one's a very, very rare error. There's definitely less than triple digits of that error out there. And me and Law each own an error card, but in addition to having a loose one, Law also has a sealed copy with the error. So the still sealed Battle Arena deck with the error visible on the front, and there's maybe, I think, 2 or 3 known copies still out there sealed, which is really cool.
Dan, you do want to put a plug in. I appreciate that you were talking just about you and Lore, but I don't want to be left out in the cold without a jacket, Dan. So
you also
would you
have
like
the error card, yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. I can't represent the collection if I'm not holistic in that fashion.
The
Dan,
thing
let's
is,
keep
people,
moving.
whenever we talk about something rare, people assume you already have it. They have to be told if I have it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're moving on. I wish, and I thank you for clarifying the fact that I did not get everything in a proper chronological order. And I said that at the beginning of the video because I have no idea. I was doing the best I could, just pulling things around me. So so let's continue. I have a couple more now. So since we're on the point of a Battle Arena deck, I'm going to stay with a Battle Arena deck, and I'm going to show a couple of these here. So here we go. And that they may not be from the same years. Dan will hopefully talk about them. I'll show them quickly. This is an Ultra Necrozma. And again, Battle Arena decks.
Yeah.
I just want to see the year on this. So this says 2019. Let me show this one. This says 2018. This is a Blastoise Battle Arena deck. I know it's not perfect. You get the idea. You guys get the idea.
Blastoise was the one like I talked about where you got the Blastoise and Charizard. Yeah. Yeah, so the Rayquaza and the Necrozma, actually, I forgot they came out after the Blastoise Charizard. So those came out as kind of like pairs of decks, so you could hold them up next to each other and they kind of matched. Yeah, there's the Charizard. So those all have some exclusive foils and stuff in them. The Necrozma Rayquaza ones, I think, have different foilings on the actual GXs. I need to remember off the top of my head. There's that whole Sheen versus Mirror foil thing. I never remember what order what stuff goes in. But all of them have something exclusive in them. And again, they're just ready to play out of the box decks. I think they changed the design so they could, display more cards on the front of each one to get more people excited, show off a bit of stuff. Because I know at least on the Blastoise and Charizard one, they're showing off the Blastoise and Charizard, and then they're showing off those trainer cards, which are exclusive foils. So kind of advertising that to players of, hey, even if you don't want to play this deck, you might want to play this trainer card, and here's a nice foil version of it.
So when I bought the decks, I bought an extra 1 or 2 just because I saw how they were sort of escalating in price rapidly. And of course, everything with Charizard and Blastoise tends to do that. So I don't know if there's if the strength of the deck or the look of the product makes a better difference, or the character that is featured, or the fact that the print runs maybe weren't as strong during that time. But some of these things are pretty expensive now and still obviously command a price premium, despite the fact that probably people aren't buying them to utilize the decks anymore. They would have maybe bought them back then, and maybe now it's more appealing for a sealed collector or something.
Yeah, I think it does always come down to strength of the character. Like I imagine out of those four, the Necrozma is by far the cheapest, just because Rayquaza, Charizard, Blastoise are much stronger characters. Strength of the deck doesn't really factor in now, but if there is a product which is a very powerful deck, then it does mean that more of them were opened at the time, and there might just be less sealed copies out there. So while there might be a product like this where you talk about a sealed product where you go, oh, this is more expensive and it's a better deck, it's not because people are buying it now because the deck's expensive. It's that the sealed population is much lower because way more of them were opened for that purpose. Just if more were opened at the time.
So a couple more and we'll finish up. So we went from 2-player starter decks to theme decks to yesterday trainer kits. We've covered battle arena decks, V battle decks, all kinds of different things with little slight differentiation in some of the titling. And I always find it interesting as we move through the years how things seem to change. So here's another one for you. Little differentiation in the name.
Yeah.
League battle deck versus we were just doing battle arena decks. So, Dan, same exact thing, just a little different name. Here's, by the way, let me do one more. Let me show this one. And then I have this one too. Let me show this real quick. This one is the Charizard and the Reshiram. And I want to tell you something, Dan, that's really kind of cool is every time my cat is startled awake, he hears your voice and you got that calming presence that he knows when you come visit here. And Luca goes right back to sleep every time you start talking. Audience, you should not do that. That's just a cat thing. Dan, League Battle decks, thoughts?
Yeah, so League Battle decks were, I say, it was the next step up. They made them slightly more advanced decks than a lot of the other ones they've done. The idea was you could take this to League and you'd do okay. It was a functional deck. I think the two that you've got there were maybe still kind of on the low end of the power level. They were still just more between starter and more competitive, because those were the early ones. The more recent ones, especially, I think the Mew EX one was a big one that was basically tournament ready right out the box. So the Mew, and then there was the Regieleki one. Those future ones would include, multiple copies of the Vs and V Maxes. They were really hyping it up as this is basically ready to go. You just need to make a few edits. The Mew one, especially, you could basically buy two copies of the deck, and you would have enough to have a tournament deck. Like, you could take that to a regionals or something, because it would just mean some of the cards where you had 2 or 3 copies, you would just up those to 4 by buying the second copy of the deck, and you could have a fully tournament competitive deck for like $60, which was great for people getting into the game at that point. So that's what League Battle decks are, is they're much more powerful decks. They're much more focused towards, we want you to be able to play this deck right out the box and still have a chance.
Dan, League Battle decks, Battle Arena decks, and the kind of these last ones I showed, more recently released, and really all the way back to some point in theme deck world. The only thing regarding cards inside, as far as they may have a variant or two. Again, these differences in hollows or type of hollows or non-hollows, right? Almost all of these collections probably have that variant or two inside of them.
Yeah, I'd say that it's only the Legendary Collection theme decks that do for WotC era, and a couple of other gift boxes that had decks and stuff in, but for the TPCI era, the vast majority of them will have something that's different.
Okay, so we don't always. So for me, for example, I happen to have a couple of these other boxes that I may or may not have bought to open for a variant, and then sometimes you'll come and we'll be talking, and we just decide to keep something closed. because it may be worth more for me to be able to resell it and just go buy that single variant or two from the box,
Yeah.
correct, for the collection.
Yeah, that's especially because a lot of the stuff that you had, it was towards the end of Sun and Moon era, early Sword and Shield era. There was about a 2-year period where you just bought every product but never opened anything to get the variants. And especially the late Sun and Moon era stuff, by the time I visited and we got to organizing your stuff, the sealed product from that had gone up in value so much that it was literally, you'd have $100 sealed product, and what we'd want from inside would be a $2 non-holo rare. So it was never worth opening those. Like, if you bought it at the time, like one of those League Battle decks, and you paid say $20 for it, bust it open, you get your variant, resell, the whatever the face cards are with the Charizards on, you probably make most of your money back, and it's worth doing it. But because of the appreciation of value over time, it was definitely not worth buying those anymore. We just went online and bought most of the non-holo rares that you needed.
Okay. All right, great. So I have two more and that's it. So here's the last, second to the last one. Again, I'm back. I'm in chronological order to this point. These are 2023. So we have something now called Deluxe Battle Deck. So it's so funny, everything League Battle Deck, Arena Battle Deck, whatever, all these different things. So here's a Deluxe Battle Deck. And again, I know there's many different copies of these. Here's a different one right here. So Dan, here we are with a Deluxe Battle Deck. Anything nuanced differently than the last one we spoke about, which was a League Battle Deck?
I think those are slightly lower powered than the League Battle decks. Like, if you look on the front of those, it's got the Pokeball rating in the bottom corner, and you'll see it says it's a level 2 in the bottom left. I think the more recent League Battle decks are level 3, and when they were doing it, your standard theme deck was like a level 1. So that is just an indication of how complex the deck is to play.
That's great. I had no idea that there was a level such thing, and I just learned my one pearl of wisdom for sitting through the video. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, last one, Dan. I know this one is different, and these have always been completely confusing to me. I'm sure they're not confusing to others, but they've got to be a bit confusing to some, because what exactly is inside them and how do you go about mimicking some of the other things we've talked about through this entire video, this concept of trying to put together a deck that you could compete with, etc. So I just picked one type. So this is called what, Dan? A build and battle deck?
That's a build and battle kit.
Okay, a build and battle kit. So tell me about a build and battle kit and how they are or are not similar or not to all of these different kinds of things we've discussed today and yesterday.
So they are completely different.
Okay.
So
wait, intent-wise, are they even different with the concept of intent to use them to create a deck? Is that different as well?
Completely different.
Okay.
Because everything else we've talked about today and yesterday was a fixed product. Those have booster packs in them.
Okay.
So generally, they used to just be known as pre-release kits, but they got rebranded to build and battle so that they would have, some shelf life and sale viability after the pre-release window, because like GameStop and stuff started getting them. So what you will get in there is you will get a seeded mini deck. You'll get one of 4 pre-release promos. Sets have 4 pre-release promos, usually like alt art or something from the set, although with next set we're going back to them not being Black Star promos, they're just variants from the set again. So you get one of those and you get a small deck. Half of it will be based around the pre-release promo that you got, and the other half will be based around one of the other 3 at random, but you wouldn't get that second promo. And you also get 4 booster packs in there. The idea of those are, you open it up, you build a deck, you have your seeded deck, and you get your 4 booster packs, and you build a deck to play the pre-release event, or to play your build and battle event. Those are not really designed to have a deck going forward. For a start, you only build a 40-card deck. So the sealed package you get, the current ones you get are sealed as a 40-card deck. The previous ones are 23 cards with the idea that you add 17 basic energy into it. The new ones just have the basic energy in there as well. But they're not really intended for having any sort of viable deck after that event is done. It's just for a limited event. It's for the length of that event. When you play it in pre-release, obviously there's the nice part of getting cards a couple of weeks before they come out, which is a lot of the appeal for a lot of people there. And, there are booster packs in it, so you do have the ability to pull good stuff from them the same way you do any other booster packs. The seeded decks do have other variants in them. You'll get non-holo variants of holo cards and stuff in there as well, but it's definitely a completely different product to anything else we've talked about today.
Yeah, although the interesting thing is it is intended to formulate a deck that you would play with, so I mean, I do hear you, obviously completely different. Dan, is a 40 card deck versus a 60 card deck, other than the fact that you can obviously not include as many mechanics and strategies in card wise, is it just a faster game? Like, is it the same number of prizes that you're looking to take on a board at the end? Is there still 6? Is there less? What is the actual difference between playing with a lesser card deck than a larger card deck?
40 card decks, you would put out 4 prizes. And I believe when we talked about the trainer kits yesterday, when you played those demo games, I think you put out 3 prizes for that, because it's generally 1 prize for every 10 cards in your deck. But basically every Pokemon format, you'll be using exactly 60 cards. It's only the limited events where you build your deck on the day that you're ever playing 40 card decks. Some people will do things like drafts and stuff, which Pokemon isn't really built for drafting in the way that some other games are. But if you do a draft, you play a 40 card deck rather than a 60. You do the pre-release, which used to just be 6 booster packs rather than the seeded pack and 4 booster packs, but you would always play 40 card decks in those. But any constructed tournament where you actually bring your own cards, you're going to be playing a 60 card deck.
Okay. All right, just hold on one sec, Dan. Let me just see what the judges think of your performance today. Dan, you got from Psyduck and Pikachu, you got 2 9s. They didn't give you 10s. They're very tough, but 9s are very strong. If you think about a PSA 9, it's worth a ton of money, buddy. So
Right.
Wait a minute. Hang on a sec. You're changing it. Oh, you're such a god. I hate that. Okay. Anyway, Psyduck changed it to a 10. Okay. So you are and he's got that Quagmire look above his head, like he's not sure why he changed it to a 10 from a 9, but it doesn't matter, Dan. You got a 9.5 average. I'm proud of you. You did a great job in your and everything being thrown at you. I learned a ton, but I actually watched the whole video as opposed to others. So I'm done today. I have nothing more to say except I love you. Re-dye your hair. Tell Terapagos behind you to stop playing with the Pokemon cards when you're not in the room. And thank you for all the information and education today.
Cool. Well, I'll give a few quick announcements for people who do watch all the way at the end, because they'll be the people who care about this stuff. Tomorrow is, as usual, my fortnightly news video. I know the last time I did one of these videos, we did a Coffee Talks and the news video on the same day. We're going to skip the Coffee Talks. So we've said that on the weeks where I'm doing the Wednesday news videos, so every other week, we're going to skip Coffee Talks for that day so the 2 videos aren't fighting each other on the channel, and it eases up my workload a little bit now that these Coffee Talks have gotten so long. It takes a lot longer to edit and stuff. So we'll do that. And there'll potentially be other days in future where if I know I have a big video coming up that I want to get a lot of attention, we'll skip the Coffee Talks for that day as well, just to allow one video to shine if it has to. And something Steven did notice a few days ago, I've stopped putting the episode number in the titles of these. Currently, I'm just doing it to see if it changes interaction levels at all or changes watch levels at all. I don't know if putting the episode title number in the title kind of gives off the impression to people that it's something where they have to watch everyone in order or they're not going to be able to keep up. So I'm trying to see it. If we do it without that, does it improve views or anything in any way? So for people who've noticed and were wondering, that's what's going on there. If it turns out there's no difference, I'll go back and I'll put the episode numbers in the title or put the dates in the title, something like that. But that was just a couple of quick announcements that people will be interested in. I have nothing else to say today. David, are you all done? Are we good to go?
I'm all done. I'm ready to put my hand up and say bye-bye.
Cool. Bye-bye. Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the news video, and then we'll be back in 2 days' time. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Coffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, with music by More Than Never and artwork by Lore Norton. A special thanks to all our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to.